Mr. Chair, you are live.
All right, greetings, everybody. Welcome to the City of Annapolis Environmental Commission monthly meeting. This is the month of February 2022. And we are here with more than enough for a quorum of our group here, more than half, which is required to vote on anything. But we are in also need of three, that we're down three members, and we're looking to get some new members. All right, so my first question I was just saying was, have we all had a chance to kind of check out that agenda that was, and is that format okay for agendas? Are we gonna do like a Google Drive with agendas from now, or was there something that was used before? That was my question.
Yeah, I think Randy, in the past, we have created an agenda document in the Google Drive, and hopefully we can, with a little bit more prior planning, do that for future meetings as well, so we can have a record of what the agendas were for each of our meetings.
Cool. And so we apologize for, we're getting in the realm of these new roles and getting all the logistics and infrastructure aspects together. So we will be tightening up.
February is tough. This happened fast.
Yes, right. All right. So we want to go around and introduce ourselves. Everyone that's present today, please, maybe.
Sure, I'll start. Allison Colvin, Vice Chair, Ward 7.
Stevenson, Ward 2.
Jeremy Hansen, Ward 5.
All right. Okay, so moving right along, going into the agenda, just looking at item, we can just go right from, stick to the script there. So if you haven't seen it, go to that. Do we all approve? Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes from January that Ann has provided? Does anyone have any edits, or can we go ahead and approve that? Anybody?
No edits for me.
Okay, so do we all agree to vote to approve the minutes for January? Everyone say aye.
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 So we had one edit. I can't remember.
Yeah, with the I was assuming it was with the edit that you made. And
okay. Yes, sounds great.
Right. Okay, so we'll approve that. And I know we usually have someone taking notes. Is there someone that's taking notes today?
I think Racine is.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Racine.
I'm sorry, it took me a moment to get to my microphone. I am taking the minutes tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Racine. So moving right along, 2 minutes actually ahead of schedule. Do we have any updates on the presentation on the plastic bag ban? I guess we can kind of float around some discussions about it for her presentation next month. Does anybody have any thoughts?
yeah, just a quick update. You all probably saw some email correspondence from Paul. Elvia Thompson from Annapolis Green would be interested in presenting to us about an idea about a plastic bag ban. We invited her to join tonight's meeting, but there were conflicts, so she'd like to request time on next month's agenda to bring that idea to us. So we just wanted to open that up to you guys to see if you had any questions or comments or would support that presentation at our next meeting.
I would just say could use an update from folks at Annapolis Green, or maybe that would be from Racine or from Rob, about where things were at sort of pre-pandemic, because I feel like we wrote a letter, there was a vote, maybe they even approved a ban, but it was put on hold. I'm just a little rusty. I don't know if that could be part of the presentation, but I sort of don't remember where we left off.
Yeah, were they calling it a bag ban? I remember they're talking about the 5-cent fee, like a bag fee. I don't know if it was a complete ban on the grocery stores. We're just charging a fee, but yeah, all I remember is Alderman Savage pulled that bill shortly after the pandemic got underway. That's all I can remember. But I don't remember if it's just because they had, high priority things to deal with at the time, or if there's some other specific reason.
Do you guys think it would be helpful to, hey, Paul?
Hi, my memory is COVID came in and everybody said, whether it's, don't touch this, for all those reasons. It was COVID that knocked the plastic bag ban off, or not ban, but fee off its rails.
So did the city council not vote on anything, Paul? Was it just about to be voted on when we had the shutdown?
Basically, yes. They
Okay.
Rob yanked the bill.
Yeah, I think that we left off with discussion on which direction we were going to go in. I think that we had not made any decisions on, which direction we were going to go with this, but we were talking about what we might be able to do in reference to this ban. So I don't think we ever agreed on the terms of the ban.
Thanks, Racine. I think the other thing that I remember us having questions about was just where our action would fall in relation to like sort of what was happening in Baltimore and maybe what was happening in the county. So if that could also be part of Elvia's presentation to us, I could just use a refresher. I wonder if everything is in the same place it was 2 years ago, or if some things have changed.
Yeah. Okay, I can do some investigative work on where our discussions were and where we stand with it. But I really think that we talked about it, or the commission had talked about it, and there was no real decision made at that time.
And
yeah, I would agree with that. I think all of us were on board with having a fee. I believe Montgomery County and maybe even PG County, a few others had already done it. And I always often try to bring the economics into things. And it's kind of funny, I think, one of the things is Kate Bohannon, we had a little field trip to the transfer station. Bear with me here. We had a field trip to the transfer station, which is the waste transfer place. It smells awful. It's so loud. It's pretty impressive. It's a Rube Goldberg facility, with all these different ways to sort things, single source recycling. But so we got a little bit of a feel for that. And the people working there said the biggest problem they have, which they have to stop the whole the thing's a football field, nearly a football field long, is plastic bags gum up the machinery several times a day. And there's probably 10 people working, or 8 people working on this thing. And as I said, it's large. And it's plastic bags gum the system up, which ends up costing us a little bit of money. Maybe in the overall scope, not that much, but it's one more example of where a plastic bag has a cost to our county. So their bags are bad in many aspects.
Okay, so thank you, Paul. Where are we gonna leave it for tonight? I can move forward and try to find some information for you if you let me know what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So I can try and summarize. So Racine, I think if you could help us understand either the legislative history or the discussions that had happened previously on the fee within the city, that would be helpful. I think Randy and I can reach back out to Elvia and see if the status and the types of actions that have been taken in other jurisdictions is something that she can cover in her presentation. And if it's not, it's something that maybe, we can try and look into between now and then. Paul, is there anyone who you suggest that we would also invite to speak on this? I'm thinking now that you've mentioned that field trip, like, would it be helpful to get someone from DPW or something like that?
Well, one person, as far as, rebuilding the history, or maybe not rebuilding, but, having a summary of the history, is Kate Bohannon, Kate Bohannon, who was the chair for a while, and this was one of her big interests. So Kate would be happy to give us her recollection of, what she was looking at. But as I say, Rob Savage was on board, and it was all because of the pandemic. He pulled the bill and says, we got way bigger fish to fry. So, we could bring Kate in, and Kate and Elvia work together. Maybe they talk a little bit, and that would give us a good summary of who was leading us a couple of years ago.
Can I ask with Elvia, if she was going to be with us tonight, were we going to be talking specifically with her about the plastic bag ban?
If that's a question to me, yes. Elvia reached out to me and said, hey, can I get a few minutes on the AEC agenda? And I said, well, yeah, Annapolis Green, sure, you're credible. And then I was traveling a little bit. I didn't, whatever. She didn't realize she could be available so soon. But yeah, Elvia would probably be presenting on this, but she and Kate can put their heads together, and Elvia will summarize what their thoughts were.
Okay. Within the next couple days, I can check with Elvia and get some input from her and try to understand the history of our conversation about the plastic bag ban. And I will send an email, I'm going to say by Monday of next week.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you, Racine.
Is that okay? Okay.
Thanks, Racine. And that sounds like that'll help clarify, because I was going to suggest we want to make sure Elvia is at least aware of Alderman Savage's previous bill, since that's kind of loosely in our brains. She may need to distinguish if the ideas she's proposing or suggesting, if or where they differentiate from that previous legislation.
Okay. Give me till Monday and I'll do some investigative work, go back in our notes and everything about our conversations about the bag ban and what Elvia has to say, and I will send you something by Monday, close of business.
That sounds great, Racine. I just looked at our Google folder and I didn't see any letters. It's mentioned in our report that we made recommendations on the legislation in 2019.
Okay, thanks, Anne.
I'm sure Kate and Elvia and Rob will be able to catch us up.
Okay, great. Then I will put Rob Savage on my list of people to contact. Okay, thank you.
All right, cool. So, anything else? Does that sound pretty square on that? I think it's a good idea. I think that it's definitely worth a credible look at, and so I'm also about it. Makes me think about what other things we may could prioritize as far as pushing the envelope and encouraging people to not use or not participate in things like that.
Well, we got rid of styrofoam.
Yep.
And styrofoam Steve.
Yeah. So maybe we could look at, some type of study where we look at it and kind of analyze what we think are some of the top. And again, this can probably come along with our priorities discussions and brainstorming. But looking at what are some, what are the top challenges, and then what do we consider to be things that we can use our platform to try to invoke or start some behavioral changes with. And just a sidebar, I'm even thinking about for that brainstorming session, if we have for our priorities, maybe having that a separate meeting aside from our monthly meetings, if our schedules can allow that somehow. But we can talk about that.
I think, as you say, Randy, I think our priorities are, we already have a list of priorities, sorting those out, including it'd be nice to review the priorities we looked at the previous years, what were accomplished, what were not, how they fit with other issues. That pretty much, in my eyes, builds our to-do list.
Yeah.
Or priority list.
True. Okay, and maybe we could, and this is just a thought, maybe we could each submit some thoughts, and we could meet in person and present, like at a happy hour or something like that. Just have a discussion, somewhere to eat over some food. Just a thought. I'm hungry, that's all. Okay. So moving right along in the agenda. Parkside Preserve. Jackie is not here with us tonight, so I assume that we'll put that on hold. Is that correct?
Yeah. I just Jackie's in the thick of it when it comes to the Parkside Preserve. I am not on the front lines at all, so I really don't have an update on Parkside Preserve. I think, generally speaking, has been quiet the last week, this week, at least. But that would be a Jackie thing.
Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts on what's going on right now with Parkside Preserve, or heard anything?
I have not heard anything. I will say that we did, I circulated to everyone, I believe, an updated letter that we sent that we voted on at our last meeting related to the resolution that had been introduced by Alderman Savage pertaining to the Parkside Preserve project, and encouraging the city to utilize their authority to issue stop work orders. So I just wanted to remind everybody that we did circulate that letter specifically to the members of the Environmental Matters Committee who would be hearing that resolution. I have not heard anything back yet, and I don't know if Environmental Matters has considered that resolution yet. But we did take that action after our last meeting.
I think the last time I had a meeting was with Environmental Matters Commission or Committee. And I think at that point in time, which was last week, Alderman Savage had not yet made all the changes he wanted to, or the amendments he wanted to this resolution. So it's still out there hanging, so to speak, for input and for it to move forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Racine.
On folks, on an overview, I think most of the problems have finally been corrected, or at least, you know, it's not as bad as it used to be. But on an overview, not speaking week to week or month to month, myself, like most of you, I think try and give people a little bit of time to correct. I am definitely a carrots, not a stick type of guy as far as incentives, but sitting on this commission for a while and listening to the people at Parkside and some departments in the city, like, oh, it's under control, it's under control, it's under control, and citizens keep showing more photos of it's not under control. My opinion is this is one of the areas going forward with these developments, we ought to be firmer, and I think our city ought to be firmer, and that's part of what Rob's legislation is likely about. But it just, I've sat here for a couple of years and listened to these developers say they're working on it, and the city's like, well, we'll get on them when it gets bad, and then they fix it. And I think they've under-delivered almost all the time. So I'm just saying I'm tired of listening to the talk, and I think I appreciate you writing the letter. I think it was obviously it's within your bounds, and you were completely correct on that. We need to be tougher with these developers. They just seem to try and keep getting away with things until it's been going on too long. So I'm glad Rob and us and others are getting a little tougher on them.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think my contribution to this conversation can come during our priorities, but I think Director Johnson invited us to work on the internal updates to the code and the inspection protocols. And I think that's one of those places where we can maybe insert the requirement that Randy and Allison suggested in the letter around sort of outreach and community meetings. And so I'm hoping that that's one way we can sort of continue to engage in the process.
Anything further? Anyone else share anything further on that?
Well, I do like the fact, I may be incorrect on this, but from what I read, the reliable contractors finally brought in an outside entity, a third party, to oversee the runoff and the environmental damage. They were, I guess doing it with their own workers, and maybe they're not as skilled, and that's not what they're paid to do, or didn't think they were, whatever. It wasn't working. And sure, it adds a little bit of a cost to the developer by having an outside party oversee this, but that's the cost of not screwing up our creeks. So my point is bringing in an outside entity to oversee the contractor's work, I think turned out was a good move, and I don't mind seeing that happen sooner than later next time, even if the developer's squawking about the cost. But this is so much pebble in my shoe. It's all about, so much of it, privatize the gain, socialize the loss. And I don't care if the developers have to pay a little bit more to quit screwing up our creeks.
Yeah. Okay. So moving right along, does anyone have anything else on that before we move on to the next item? Okay, cool. So moving right along, the next item on our agenda is priorities. And apparently we do have in our midst a copy of the 2021 priorities. So we will be planning to share those, I guess, if they haven't been shared already. But I was more so thinking about using this time to talk about, I guess, framework of how we want to go about creating our 2022 priorities list. So just want to open it up with, what you all think is the best route to go about coming up with this new list, as opposed to, or just going the way that it's been done previously. Just my input on it. I think that, I don't know how in depth we want to look at our issues and things like that. But I feel like, maybe some type of study or analysis could serve well. Maybe even also hearing from some members. So maybe even there's some type of survey we could come up with to get input from community on different aspects, and then taking that input, soliciting that input, and helping that drive our decisions to what we prioritize. Because I mean, we all have our own thoughts and that opinions that we bring to the table, and recommendations and such. So I just feel like maybe that could influence or encourage some of our thoughts to what we could talk about. I don't know, just a thought. And then also just when we want to try to do that, do we want to do it during our regular meetings, or do we want to do it on a separate bar meeting, or do we want to just create a Google kind of a Google assignment thing? You can just go in and type in what you think. What do you all think?
Thanks, Randy. I appreciate you asking about how we should go about doing this, and it would be fun to, sit outside and talk about it over coffee. But I would say that I think one of the things that's been challenging for me as a member and somewhat frustrating is that there are so many environmental issues that we could tackle, and there are we're frequently asked to comment on development and pending legislation and write a letter or participate, say, in the comprehensive plan process. And if we do those things, we don't have a lot of more time to sort of pursue other projects or priorities. And because we have a list of 15, it's sort of our energy gets kind of scattered, and sometimes it sort of feels like it's hard to know what we should do next. So I think, I'm excited about the things that we've been invited to participate on already around the sort of changes to the development code and the process. And Jackie invited us to comment on the resiliency plan. And I think those would be good. And I think I would just sort of urge us to maybe try to do fewer things together and know, and maybe then leverage other folks to tackle other things. But we have like a big purview, and I think we get stretched kind of thin. And I would just say that Bevan convened a meeting in the beginning of 2019 at the Pip Moyer Center around environmental issues that should be addressed in the comprehensive plan. And then we worked to get many of those integrated into the plan, but we have those notes from that meeting too. So not to say that we shouldn't have another meeting or solicit other feedback, but that might be sort of a useful thing to go back to. And I can look for our notes from that meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Good idea, and I agree. Yeah. Maybe, and I believe the commission has some type of nonprofit status. If that's correct, maybe this is a time where is that correct? Right. I think I heard that somewhere. But if it is, maybe there's an opportunity we can look into getting some help donated from different communities to give us input on things. Maybe even just say, and I had thought about this the other day, just with models, just like maybe science or environmental models of our environmental landscape, maybe climate change models from different science modeling organizations. And we could use that just as stuff to put on our website and to just talk about, different things, but more so look at kind of how to present it in a way that's communicated in a way that's attractive to all people. But just a thought. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to weigh in on it?
I'll jump in. I think one thing that could be helpful is if we revisit our community organization liaison roles. I know last year we were assigned to specific environmental organizations in the area. And Randy, to your point about some sort of survey or something like that, I think if we can take some time to do some active outreach to the environmental groups in the area and see if we can identify some themes that are priorities for them, maybe that could be a way to boil down some 1 to 2 proactive items that we really want to focus on pushing on. And I think we should probably revisit that list anyway, considering we're down on our commission members. We've probably got some groups that aren't covered anymore. So that might be another good thing to look at, or another way we could solicit input.
Okay. I think, Paul, you're not on mute, Paul.
Oh, yeah, some background noise. Sorry.
Yeah.
The other thought is, what do our, we're a volunteer organization. I don't think we have the horsepower to go out and do a survey and compile it and distill it and all that. But it's a good, we do want to know what's going on. I wonder how much input our aldermen would have, what their communities want. I mean, obviously Rob is, most environmentally active, others are, but each alderman may have something in their ward or district that is important to them. So maybe we just ask the alderman what's their priority list instead of trying to reach out to all their constituents.
I mean, the survey could be electronic, I feel like, and that could really be easily distributed.
Yes. I don't know what the response rate would be, and then somebody still has to distill all that information.
Right. I mean, the way these surveys work, it kind of categorizes all the
Well, we could do it, but what I guess would, echoing what others are saying, let's go back to see what our priority lists were of the last couple of years, what stands big and strong. The alderman might be able to weigh in on something, and if we still have the feeling that we need more from the city residents, then I guess we could do a survey.
Yeah.
So you had that kind of heart. You don't have that kind of heart. You got the heart together.
I don't know. I just feel like, it would be, I mean, I know we represent wards and things, but I just feel like it would be something that would be worthy. Even if it's just 10 people that do a survey from from a handful of communities, I feel like it would give us something, to say that we have kind of thought it important, or deemed it important enough that we took the time to get that input and kind of took that input into our considerations for our priorities. Just a thought.
Well, how about, I'm not against it. I just don't know how many things we can get done. How about this? We put the potential survey on our list of things to do. Let's go through that list of things to do and see what are, the top priority and what aren't so top priority.
Right. Yep. Okay. Anybody else? Good points, Paul.
Yeah, I like the idea of us exploring a survey down the road. But I agree with Paul that, it is a potential bandwidth issue. But I don't want to rule it out because I think it would be good to get input, especially from some of our community organizations. But I would think if we want to reach out to the aldermen, we don't need a survey. We just need a few questions typed up into an email and email them.
Agreed.
Just seven of them. So it's not difficult. And yeah, that's what I have on that.
I like how you thinking, Jeremy. These aldermen, they represent communities, right? So to alleviate having to go in and out of the weave of the bureaucracy of things, we could just ask the aldermen what believe that them and their constituents to be the top 3 to 5 priorities as it relates to the environment. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, something like that. It wouldn't need to be more than 2 or 3 questions, depending if how we want to phrase things, like priorities for the AEC to address, or just issues in environmental issues of greatest interest or urgency to your ward. Just 2 or 3 questions.
I think too, we can ask them, in addition to if they have any issues or concerns in their ward, what environmental or environmental tangential legislation they may be planning to introduce, because then we can engage with them early on in the process and help them talk through those ideas if they're interested in our feedback and help on that.
Yep. And I'm assuming it's something that me and Allison, we can just put together some kind of Google Doc, put it in the drive, and then, we can go in and add and edit things. And then say maybe on our next meeting, we could discuss what we have in the drive or in the doc, and we can go from there. How does that sound to everybody?
That sounds good. And to sort of get back to this conversation of connecting with the alderman, to Allison's earlier point, I'm not sure that we have a regular liaison to the Environmental Matters Committee. So I don't know if anybody's regularly attending that meeting. But
during the workday, so I don't think any of us are able to.
So that might be something to sort of have on the list, and maybe we don't need to normally go, but we used to have somebody who was assigned to sort of reading the minutes and checking the agenda and all that jazz. And I'm not sure that we're sort of following up on that at the moment.
Yeah, and so I just pulled up our tasks and leads from last year, which is where we did this, and I think it fell under legislation. So Bevan, myself, Randy, and Jeremy were assigned to legislation, but I'll be completely honest that following up on the environmental matters minutes was not on my radar. So we can definitely make sure that when we revisit this, that is explicitly somebody's on first for covering that.
Yeah, and just make a list of what we think that means, like looking at the city council agenda, looking at the environmental matters committee agenda, whatever it is. Yeah, because I don't know if that's always been clear to anyone.
Great point. Great point. And I totally agree. And I'm totally up for participating in some of those meetings. If somebody could, I don't know who I need to talk to get on that, get the invites or whatever, but I'm more than welcome to do that. Also, Allison, that document you're looking at, I know it exists, but if you have it to share with me so I can have it right at the top of my stuff, I can refer back at that as well. For my records. Okay. And then, so can we set a potential date for when we want to have our priorities, our newly priorities list complete and delivered or passed on to whoever we're going to send that to? Does anyone have throw out any dates for deadline as far as that's comparable, feasible?
When I was just looking at the calendar to see when we would meet next. There are actually 5 Wednesdays in March. So if maybe we could pick our next meeting date if we think it's going to be Wednesday the 23rd and go from there.
So you're saying have it
We have a week before our meeting.
Complete by our next meeting. And when we say complete, we mean like our input put into some type of doc, right? Is that where we're at with that? Or do we mean the actual priorities list complete?
Maybe ready to vote, or maybe we don't have to vote on them, but to have a sort of final discussion.
Okay, cool. So all right. So we'll plan that everyone had their notes in there by next meeting, and me and Allison will work to get that doc and file shared with you all so you can see it. You just click the link and then go into the doc, maybe see your name or your section and just type away. And also we'll have the previous priorities there so you can see. Just type away. I mean, you can share much of the input you shared tonight, just so it's on black and white somewhere. But we took notes here, so. But this is all very good suggestions, I believe, and I like the ideas.
Can I just jump in, Randy, and just clarify the timeline? So are we saying our next meeting is March the 30th, and we would like everyone's suggestions by March 23rd, so that we have time to clean everything up and summarize, so that we have a somewhat final document to look at and discuss on the 30th? Am I hearing that right?
That sounds correct to me. I thought she said 23rd, but
yeah, I was thinking that if we meet on the 4th Wednesday, I don't know. I mean, Julian and Racine will know better than us if we mess people up, if we switch to the 5th Wednesday, or if that doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right, is it the 4th Wednesday or the last Wednesday?
Exactly.
I would need MIT and Julian and whoever else, Mark Hildebrand, to help me out with that. It's all about scheduling.
So what we're saying, is it easier to just stay on that 24th or that 23rd, that 4th Wednesday?
Well, I personally think that that's a good date. Gives you some time to think and talk and maybe even meet about your priorities prior to them. Prior to then.
Okay. So we'll stick with that, everybody. Is that okay with everybody? All right. So we'll stick with that 4th Wednesday in the month. Okay. Moving right along. Does anybody have anything else on priorities? I just also would like. Okay, go ahead.
Randy.
Uh-huh.
And under the spirit of surveys, in the last 20 minutes, as I've been walking Smokey around, I popped in on my friend's, West Street businesses and asked him about plastic bag bans. And a couple things we have to remember: if you're carrying anything heavy out of a store, whether it's a bottle of wine or a bottle of water, and it's a moist night, rain, drizzle, it's going to fall. A paper bag's going to fail. So some type of plastic-y bag is going to be needed, and people are going to, and that's a completely legit issue. But, It doesn't have to be oil-based plastic. There's plenty of recyclable bags. They are a little bit more expensive, but that's life. Having lower impact. And so my point is, plenty of businesses, whether they're serving soup, pasta, or a heavy bottle of wine, paper's not going to work, so they go to the plastic type, and the recyclable ones are going to cost a little bit more. And that's, it's just, maybe recyclable bags as the volume increases, the price decreases, but that's just one little hurdle that we, Rob, City Council, everybody will have to overcome.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm thinking about like Whole Foods or some of those grocery stores, Trader Joe's, and they have those like to-go kind of grocery bags that they're not plastic, they're kind of like linen, almost like a hemp type of feeling. And I assume that's because they probably don't want to bust and stuff like that. So yeah, and that stuff is a lot more expensive, but I feel like, the sustainability is expensive. It is. I mean, it can be costly to make these changes to replace a lot of these great infrastructure.
Yeah, I didn't mean to open up the whole thing again, but I did just ask 3 different businesses, and
yeah, good job.
So
that's a good point.
Back to the other topics. Thank you.
What was that? You were breaking up a little bit. Okay, so I was just going to add that I would love to see some type of model or like a graph or some type of chart that would list out our priorities versus just a paragraph and some bullets or something like that. I feel like something a little more festive or lively or colorful would really be beautiful. And I think we could pull that off once we have our final copy of our thing. So that's just my own thing I've been like thinking about, and just working with some other different modeling organizations like University of Maryland Center for Environmental Sciences Integration and Application Network. If anybody's familiar with them, but that's a lot of type stuff that they do. Okay, moving right along. One thing that wasn't really in the agenda, but I'll add that on there, is kind of a DEIJ scope. So I can just talk about that real briefly. And that is that, right now I'm working on coordinating several environmental organizations that are owned by people of color and that service low-income communities to submit a grant for the Chesapeake Bay Trust for the Urban Tree Program, which is to plant trees in public housing communities throughout the state. And I would love to get a letter of support from AES that says they support whatever. I mean, I don't know what they could support, but it would really, it would be cool. So far, we're getting letters of support from HACA and the city of Annapolis. We're also trying to get a letter of support to accompany many of these grant submissions. So that's one thing I've been working on. We recently had the deadline end for our internship program with the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. And so we'll be looking at, different new partners that we want to look at and engage with. If organizations want to be a part of that process, they could surely listen in for this round and then learn about the program and could submit for next round. One other thing I did want to talk about was, my and many others' charge in life to work in the environmental sector, doing outreach with our people, and getting them to go outdoors more and play outdoors more, engage with our natural environment, plant trees, plant plants and flowers and things like this. go into environmental careers and such. But with, one of the things I've always tried to really encourage was how we can figure out how to prioritize safety as an environmental issue. Just recently, we had 3 youth, young adults shot in the city of Annapolis. And I'm presently sure that, when you ask somebody like myself, well, hey, let's go out. We're trying to encourage these kids to go outside and go outdoors and engage with the natural environment. But if they don't feel safe, then that presents a particularly new challenge. It kind of makes it very hard for us to do the work that we do. So I would like to place some kind of, we can just talk about it or not, but, how do we feel about public safety being prioritized or even recognized as an environmental issue, especially as it relates to outreach in communities of color, low-income communities. So just a thought.
I'll just say, Randy, I think. Go ahead, Paul.
No, you go first.
I'll say, I've been on the commission for a year now, and we have spent a lot of time talking about the value of green space and public space and things like, in the adequate public facilities review and things like that. But I think you make a good point that it doesn't matter how much green space you have if it's not safe to be there, right? So I do see that as a part of making sure that we have access to nature within the city for everyone. And that means proximity, that means, the quality of the green space, that means the amenities that are in that green space, but also the safety piece as well. I personally am not sure how best to engage or advise the city on that, but I'm open to hearing and learning more about how we can support that through the AEC. Yeah, I'll stop there.
My thoughts living, for those who don't know, I live between Rao Boulevard and Clay Street. We have it's a small one-way street with only 4 homes on it. But I started a community garden maybe 7 years ago, and really I was hoping more neighbors would get interested in it. They weren't, and Randy and others have heard me say this before. There's plenty of empty lots in the greater Clay Street area. Homestead Gardens would be willing to donate some soil. The problem with gardens is, as people know, it's delayed gratification. You plant your tomatoes and you hold your breath for 60 days, and maybe that delayed gratification doesn't work for younger kids. But I think there's sufficient empty spots in the greater Clay Street area and other areas. There's vacant lots, and we're just doing what those residents' grandparents used to do. This is not just yuppies with rose-colored glasses, but their grandparents grew vegetables there. So why don't we have more community gardens in these areas where there's vacant lots? And each one of those communities, whether it's the alderman, we don't have the horsepower to do that, but whether it's the alderman or some other entity could, help get that going. But that topic has been out there I started my garden maybe 7 years ago, and really hasn't been adopted.
Yeah, it just made me think about thinking and hearing about the plastic ban. And I've always said this about, you may have heard me say this before about how I hear a lot of people and I see a lot of change and legislation and immediate memos and all different types of hoopla and hell that people raise when there's an environmental issue that's hurting environmental impacts, like sediment and the stream quality and things like that, which is great, but we have situations in our city where we have people's lives who are threatened and being, kind of attacked. And I don't see the same amount of hoopla that people raise when in fact, much of it is the same dynamic, which is an environmental issue. We can promote all day to get people outdoors, engage with our natural environment, but if people don't feel safe, it puts off a different energy. So,
well, I agree, and it's a very noble cause. I completely agree with you, but not like drugs and guns don't have anything to do with this either, and that's not within our purview. So, you know, I've just walked past Clay Street and, you know, less plastic bags rolling around, not the biggest thing in the world, but if you subscribe to 1,000 broken glass, whatever that book was. Anyways, the big thing is, you know, it's drugs and guns, and that isn't not our department. So, totally
I mean,
worthwhile.
it's also opportunity and hope. I mean, you know, I mean, there's a lot of attempts that are being made and that people can make. And I'm just speaking about, I don't want us to go down, it's not a thing about the causes of why. I'm more so thinking about, we are trying to encourage and promote people to go outdoors, right? And so if we're going to promote that, then we need to, you know, also somewhat consider whether it's safe. And so if there's things that we can do to try to, like I was about to say with the ban and the fee for the plastic ban, maybe there's a way we can provide some type of leverage on housing developments to pay a fee or some type of something happening to them if they can't provide safety in their communities, so that organizations and environmental advocates can encourage and provide and encourage them to go outdoors. So if a community doesn't provide safe outdoor recreation, so locations for youth to play at, then that could be an environmental issue. And that's something that, you know, could be provided leverage on them to do that through a group like AEC. And through our, you know, abilities, we can encourage them to, you know, double down on their efforts to create safe environments for youth to go outdoors, because essentially we're promoting environmental isms, environmental careers, and advocacy. And it just really makes it a lot harder when there's a different set of challenges for different people just off the dynamic of where they live at. Some people wake up and see turtles and ducks in their front yard every day. Some people wake up and hear gunshots and see drug needles and trash out front their yard every day. Those two people are going to see the environment differently. And they're going to feel a certain way about taking care of the environment differently. And so that's the dynamic that we're seeking to kind of engage in.
Well, Randy, maybe you speak to a few of the aldermen in those areas you're speaking of and see what their suggestions are. And maybe there's some ideas we can follow, but, you know, that we just, you know, there's a lot of different things to work on. And I feel we got our hands full on the topics we have already. Not saying they aren't important causes, but, you know, let's see what Finlayson and Rhonda Pin Charles and others feel needs to be worked on. And if it's something a little bit more tangible, more specific, maybe that could gain some momentum.
And I think there are some things too that have very clearly through research, environmental disparities that have been linked to crime, that have been linked to public health. And those are things that are directly impacting people's day-to-day, but they do have direct correlations with the environment and environmental disparities. You know, urban tree canopy has been linked to crime rates. So the more urban tree canopy you have, the less the crime is. Now, of course, I'm sure that there are other external influences that are driving that as well. But these are some of the correlations that have already been established in the literature where environmental disparities are contributing to or improving in the opposite direction some of these concerns that I think Randy is bringing up. So if we're able to make those types of connections and incorporate them into our priorities that we already have, then I think that makes our arguments and makes our work even stronger and more impactful. But I definitely understand where you're coming from, Paul, and I think it reflects Anne's comments earlier about wanting to make sure that we're able to focus on 2 or 3 big priorities that we collectively think are important for our group.
Agreed. And I believe the city still has, each spring they have a plant a tree program, right? I've done that a few times. Again, I live a block from Clay Street. There's a tree planting. Now, I could be wrong if it's gone away because of COVID or budget cuts. I don't know. But for years in the spring, they gave away indigenous trees for free to residents to plant. So that's this spring. That's not too far away. So here's one. Let's rally all neighborhoods and, Randy, ones that you want to work on, get them to participate in the plant a tree in your backyard, plant a tree in the vacant lot, plant it, I don't want to say wherever, but where appropriate. The city gives away free trees each year. How many of those trees have been planted? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more. I've never heard of that program, but that's not what my approach was thinking a little bit more strategic and executive from an administrative level, things we can do. But yeah, those ideas are great as far as planting trees, but there's a lot more dynamics that we want to add to this. Like one, social equity. How about programs where we pay residents to plant trees? So that way they are able to support their families and raise their quality of life through green infrastructure development. So that's just one example. I think just, and again, leaving a child or a family to plant their own tree in a community that they may not feel safe in being outdoors in isn't really, to me, a great accomplishment. I think there needs to be a much more strategic approach to that, like I was saying. So,
well, there was the fellow, I think he was a man of the cloth, who had that environmental program going for youth, minority youth, a few years ago, and I think I believe you know him personally, Randy. But there was that piece, and I just hit the city website. Free trees still given away. You plant a tree during the daytime, not the nighttime. Do it with a community. I would hope people are comfortable walking down their street, and planting a tree.
Well, that's one thing the survey can look at. Are people in some of these communities comfortable walking down the street planting a tree? I think that's some valuable research to gain, especially if we're going to try to do outreach and advocacy in those communities. So, but
well, Randy, I wonder if there's a way that we could pick one community, if there are specific meetings or interventions or projects that are happening in Robinwood, like maybe that's where we go and we join and find out how, sort of how we might support some of what's happening. I don't know how to help you get started at the sort of high level other than to sort of join the conversations that are already happening in the city. And I think we just would have to ask the mayor's office how we could get involved.
Yeah.
But to get back to Paul's point that, I think if we were geo-targeted to some extent, then we could either, we could work on specific projects or link a specific community to, something happening around another environmental initiative in Annapolis that, sort of was the connection. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if it could be more effective if we sort of picked a place. But.
Yeah, I feel you like having a pilot, one community. Totally feel you on that. That's a great point. And definitely will work to really centralize our efforts versus feeling like we had to, spread out citywide. I think that a target one community as a pilot would definitely be a great idea, especially somewhere like Robinwood, that has experienced such amount of trauma that they have in that community over the last 5-10 years.
Well, I don't want to eat up the whole night on this, but my thoughts would be not to, quote, pick a winner, one neighborhood over another. Maybe talk to the aldermen. Maybe one alder person has more interest in doing this, or knows some of their constituents are very interested in doing it. That would be a differential. This team is really interested. Some are somewhat interested. Other people are really motivated. That might be it. But I would sure like residents in every area to have the opportunity to either, I don't want to say sink or swim, but take advantage of this opportunity or not. And my advice, Randy, would, before we try and go higher level, is the city has a free tree program. Let's go in and find out what neighborhood did take trees and has done it for a couple of years and planted trees and build a little teamwork and spirit, and a journey begins with a single step. So take little successes and leverage them into more. So
every community doesn't have the same challenge. So I don't, that's just what I'll say about that. Every community doesn't have the same challenges. So we love to have this type of outreach, and we love to not have to do it in no communities. But there's a specific set of challenges that has brought about this need for this amount of effort. And again, it's not just planting trees. It's a much more strategic approach to creating social equity in some of these communities. Some of which includes things like lights at night where it's not unsafe. Trash, clean streets, water quality, lead, and things like that, and mold, and some of the air pipes and things like that. So it extends much further than just planting a tree. And I think if in all honesty, if we can do it right, it would never be us just asking youth to volunteer to plant trees or community members to just plant trees. We'll be coming in and giving them environmental education, environmental literacy webinars, and paying them to plant trees. This is how you create social equity in underserved communities, to build capacity. And that's the best management practice itself. It's not coming in and asking citizens in those communities to volunteer is not a best practice. It's not something that's encouraged. So.
Look, street lights, that's public safety. Police,
right.
These are all completely valid issues, but I'm on the environmental commission, not the public safety or the road works or public works department. So you're correct on those, but those are, in my eyes, way outside our world. And all I'm saying is, I applaud what you're doing. I agree with you, but let's build on some little successes by saying, whether it's Robinwood or Clay Street or any other place, I understand there's differences, but I'm speaking of communities that are similar socioeconomic. Let them have the opportunity to do a little bit more for their own neighborhood, and we'll get rid of plastic bags, and they plant a few more trees. And yeah, look, if there needs to be more lighting in some areas, absolutely that should happen. But again, that's not AEC's department.
So I'm trying to think of ways to kind of carve out or find the Venn diagram where these intersect with AEC purview. And I'm thinking public access, I believe, is something that falls in our scopes. And, obviously feeling safe being out and about in the environment within your own neighborhood is step one, but maybe our purview covers like step two, which is like if you're trying to enjoy the infrastructure we have here locally in terms of parks or other paths or walkways and in nature or water access sites. I think you also need to feel safe in that context, and safety might mean something different. Whereas you might be safety might mean one thing in their own neighborhoods. Safety in other areas of town might mean just feeling safe in their own skin and not being worried about someone calling the cops on them, which has happened to our own aldermen when they've been trying to enjoy public access sites in town. So maybe there's a way for us to help promote and raise awareness of public access or trails and the infrastructure within the city, and just trying to make sure people understand, these are available to the public. Everyone's welcome to use them. Please use them, everyone. And you should feel safe doing so.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the announcements and new business. Does anybody have any announcements or new business here?
Okay, I just wanted to sort of step in and say some of the stuff that the city is working on. And me personally, working with Jackie, we're looking at making the city facilities as an example, if nothing else, of what we do. And I'm checking into spraying within the city with pesticides or any kind of spraying that's done for road pests within the city. I am checking into that and trying to green that part of the city goings on. We are looking at installing pollinator gardens at the city's solar park. We're working on the city's sustainability certification through Sustainable Maryland. And very importantly, we're looking for projects that incorporate underrepresented areas of the city. We are just working on including low income in our environmental plans.
So do you think, Racine, that that's one way that we can sort of loop back to our previous discussion?
What do you mean the previous discussion?
Well, Randy's point about underserved communities and safety.
I mean, we are looking at ways of including represented or underserved communities within the environmental what we're talking about and what we're doing. And I'm looking at, I personally, with the job that I'm doing, I'm looking at trying to find some grant opportunities and any opportunity that we can include low income or underrepresented areas within our environmental policies.
Those are the type of grants I write. So if you ever want to know, I could unleash all of the gamut to you. So, because that's what I do. I'm actually working on 4 right now for $4 million to service underserved communities, low public house, to plant trees in public housing communities. That's what the
Right. Yeah, and we could also plant pollinator gardens in lower income areas. We could do so much in lower income areas, and we're trying to make sure that we include everybody in this discussion about environmental equality. So that's pretty much what we're doing, or what I'm doing. What I'm working on is, this.
Yeah, we put several pollinator gardens in several communities in public throughout the city, along with Black Excel, with D Ward, and a few other individuals. And we put pollinator gardens in Eastport Terrace, Bay Ridge Gardens, Robinwood, Newtown 20.
Yeah, but I mean, there are other areas that maybe we can bring some environmental equality into lower income areas, and I'm investigating that. I don't know what that means.
Well, again, that's my expertise. That's what I do. I can share a case study I wrote on it with my trip to India. It was talked about how to build capacity in these type communities to solve environmental issues. So again, that could be something you could check out, but there's about at least 10 to 20 grants that I'm aware of right now that have been sent that specifically target those communities. And one of the biggest ways to build social equity in these communities is to find ways to raise the value and break up the maldistribution of wealth resources in these communities.
Yeah.
Also to break up the inappropriate behavior patterns that take place. And then also create a plan that is works whether it's locally, nationally, or even globally, because a lot of times our environmental issues are both local and global.
So
that's one of the things that I speak on. So if you ever want a one-on-one on it, let me know. We can have a talk, and I can really break it down for you. You can kind of get a better idea for what those BMPs are.
Well, I welcome input from AEC on all of these issues, from spraying for pests to pollinator gardens to the solar park, to recognizing and addressing low income areas. I welcome any kind of input that you guys can give me. You can send me emails, and we can talk about that and move forward with that. But this is what we're working on right now.
My biggest recommendation would be just to try, if you can, at every chance you can, not to get any volunteers, but to pay people for all of their experiences and their input or their engagement. That would be a BMP in itself. And I can explain how or why if you like. We can talk later.
Yeah, we can talk later about this or offline about that. But yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I would just say, maybe this is something that we could sort of workshop as a group together, because it sounds Randy, I feel like our previous conversation was finding like our sort of entry point in, and I wonder if some of these efforts and that Racine and Jackie are researching could be one of our ways that we could engage.
Yeah, there's one document that I should have sent you prior to this meeting, but I just didn't. I can send it tomorrow morning. It's just a list of what Jackie and I have been working on as far as projects, initiatives, and so on, and so forth. So I'll send that to you tonight before not before we end, but I'll send this list to you of what we're working on and see if that works with what AEC wants to see.
Okay. Totally agree.
Thanks, Racine.
Great stuff, Racine. And also, one of the other biggest challenges is creating a platform for these communities to be heard in these populations. That's why I'm working with the city right now to create a town hall kind of environmental forum where we present environmental professionals from these communities that are doing great things throughout the area and the world, bringing them to panel discussions, having the community meet with them and talk to them, and even others that aspire to do that kind of work in environmental fields, and then also having a job fair accompanied. So along the sides of the walls, it will be all different types of organizations who are from environmental sectors who are looking to hire a more diverse employee pool. So that's something I'm actually working with the city on right now. I had a meeting last week about.
Well, maybe that can be one of our AEC projects.
Yeah, that'd be great. Or maybe all of this could tie in. That would be even more. And that's something I kind of been really excited to try to do, is try to get some of all these different great activities that are taking place throughout the city by great people, and bringing some of those efforts to a more centralized point, because I do feel like a lot of us are doing very similar things, and we may be just doing it from a very siloed perspective. So that's from the state, from the county to the city, and at the community level as well. So anybody else have any announcements or things? All right, well, I think we right at that moment. Great job, everyone. Clap it up. We did it. Yes, we made it. The first meeting in a new transitional point. And I think it went well, and it's only going to get better. And we're definitely going to refine some of our practices and some of our techniques and, our ways that we engage. And, just continue to carry the torch as it was by Bevan, a great leadership. So thank you, everybody, for coming and spending time here. Go ahead and get something to eat now, because I know I'm trying to eat. Does everybody want to vote to adjourn?
Well, before you adjourn,
Okay.
I just want to say, Randy, you've done an outstanding job with this first meeting without Bevan, and I'm very proud of you. And I've got my list of things that I need to get back to you about, the AEC that is, and Randy, good job done.
Thank you. I wouldn't be able to do it without my partner in crime, Allison, and this other supporting cast in this role. So they're like superheroes with capes on and masks. So thank you all for everybody. It's definitely a team effort, and together everyone achieves more. And so thank you all very much. Anybody have anything else? If not, we can go ahead and vote to adjourn.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Randy. I move we adjourn so you can get something to eat.
Second.
Second that. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.